and I want to talk to you about beginning with the end in mind. It's one of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you've never read that book, I encourage you to do it. It's not a Christian book, but it's a book that has a lot of good principles for leaders in it. The Bible says it like this: write the vision, make it plain, that he may run that readeth it. That's found in the book of Habakkuk. I call it Popeye's favorite book, Habakkuk. So begin with the end in mind. Now, I remember I learned this lesson the hard way. When I first started teaching kids, I graduated from Rhema Bible Training Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I had a class on children's ministry taught by Willie George. There was only 1 year that he taught this course on kids ministry. I was part of the guinea pig year of the second year class at Rhema when I first started. So I graduated high school. I hadn't even been saved when I went to Rhema. I graduated from high school. I'd been saved about 11 months. And it was a 1-year school then. They'd only been going a couple of years. So I graduated in 1978, and then they said, we're going to start a second-year program, kind of like a graduate school. And so I actually graduated again in 1979 from a 2-year Bible school. Willie George taught a class on ministering to children during my second year, and I happened to have it at the very beginning, my first quarter. And that's what drew me into kids ministry. And then I got involved with him and his kids ministry at Faith Christian Fellowship. Had 9 months to actually watch him as a kids pastor. I was teaching the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds at the 11 o'clock service. At 9 o'clock, instead of going to big church, I went to kids church and watched Willie for 9 months. That's just what the Lord asked me to do. And I'm so glad that I did it, because I learned so much just by watching him. And let me just say this: if you're just starting out, or even if you've only been going a couple of years, find somebody that's doing it really well and watch them. Just dig in and learn everything you can from somebody that you want to be like. And so that's what I did with Willie. Now, in one of my classes at Rhema, he said these words. He said, I'm going to give you 52 illustrated sermons. We might call them object lessons today. And he said, I'm going to give you enough material to last you for a year. And I wasn't even working in kids ministry yet or serving in kids, but I burned up my pencil writing down those ideas, and I got them all written down. And then when I graduated from Rhema, I took a job as a kids pastor in Port Huron, Michigan. I use the word job loosely because I wasn't paid anything, but I was helping my youth pastor plant a church, and I was serving 40, 50, 60 hours a week. The Lord did bring in money through other resources, but to be honest with you, I was brand new. I had watched Willie for 9 months, but I'd never been a kids pastor. I didn't know what to do. And so what I would do every Sunday morning is I would open up my notes from that class, and I'd pick one of those sermons. My only problem was it didn't last for me for a year. It only lasted 6 months. And at the end of that 6 months, panic hit me, because I thought, you know what? The jig is up. I've been kind of fooling these kids for about 6 months, but I don't really know what I'm doing, and I don't have any more ideas, because all of my ideas were coming from Willie, and I had exhausted that supply. So the next thing I did, I went to the Bible bookstore. This was before the internet. There was a Bible bookstore in the Detroit, Michigan area called Dixon's. I went there, and they had this huge room full of curriculum, but none of it was satisfying to me, because it wasn't teaching a Pentecostal message. It was little stories about don't steal the strawberries. They really didn't even present the gospel in a real direct way. Kind of remind me of the Episcopal Church, where they talked about Jesus, but there was never any opportunity to actually have a relationship with Jesus. And so then I thought, well, I guess I'll write my own stuff. And I kind of would get through Sunday morning and I'd go, phew, I made it. And then I'd wake up Monday morning and go, oh no, Wednesday's coming, because I had Sunday morning and Wednesday night. And I'd get through Wednesday, and then I'd go, phew, I made it. And I'd wake up Thursday morning and go, oh no, Sunday's coming. And I did that for a couple months, just kind of living in a panic. And one night, on a Saturday night, I was just begging God for a message. I didn't have one yet. And I heard these words, all you have is 6 years. I said, Lord, I don't care about 6 years. And then I heard it again, all you have is 6 years. I said, Lord, I just need something for tomorrow. And then I realized what he was saying was that I was thinking short term, and he wanted me to begin with the end in mind, to think long term. And I realized, oh, really, that's not a lot of time, because the Bible's a big book, and everything that's in this book, I have about 6 years to give them a foundation to prepare them for their teenage years, because during their teenage years is when doubt is going to try to enter in. That's what happens in that 11, 12, 13 years old. They start, and that's normal for them to ask questions. Is God real? Do I believe in God because he's really real? Or do I just believe in God because my parents do? And so it's normal for doubt to come. And so when that doubt comes during their teenage years, I want them to be prepared for it. And so I began to shift my goals. So this is one thing I do. Whenever I go to a church to do some consulting, and I do this quite a bit now, I'll go in and you do different things. Sometimes I go to church and I kind of give a health report of the kids ministry. I'll observe the kids ministry and give feedback to the pastor on where they're at, what the strengths are, what are some of the things they can work on, what my suggestions might be for this, and it's something that I enjoy doing. But usually one of the things that I do is I'll sit down with the volunteer team, the kids pastor and their whole team, and I'll, in front of a whiteboard, and I'll ask this question: what does a spiritually mature fifth grader look like? I'm using fifth grade because that's where most churches are. It used to be 1st through 6th. Most churches today are 1st through 5th grade. That's what's in the kids ministry. And so that's not the end for the kid, but for the kids pastor, they're passing them to the youth pastor. What types of spiritual traits and habits do we want them to have when we promote them to youth ministry? What's going to help them get through these challenging years, their teen years? And so we need to ask that question. And so I'll take feedback from them, and then we'll kind of narrow it down to maybe 10 or 12. And I'll say, now, if these are your goals, this is what you want to build your program on. This is what you want your curriculum to be teaching. You don't want to be teaching something that's not one of these goals, because there's lots of things you can talk about, but you want to talk about these things that you're heading towards, your vision, your goals, so that you can run with that vision. I encourage you to do this with your entire team. Sit down with everybody, all your volunteers, or maybe just your key volunteers, maybe not everybody, but the key leaders, the ones that you trust, and just ask that question: what does a spiritually mature fifth grader look like? Take in all the ideas. There's no wrong answer at that point, but then narrow it down. I wouldn't have, to be honest with you, I wouldn't have more than 10, because then it becomes diluted. It doesn't mean that other things aren't important or that you won't touch on them ever. Sometimes things can be a subcategory of another category. And so these are, in my opinion, the top 5, the things that matter the most after teaching kids for decades, being a parent and a grandparent myself. These are the top 5. And I'm talking about their relationship with Christ. I'm not talking about their behavior. A spiritually mature person, in other words, someone that has a strong relationship with Christ, what does that person look like? Number 1 is they have a daily habit of reading the Bible. Now, it doesn't have to be long, but it does have to be daily. Can you imagine if you said, this person is my best friend, but you only talk to them once a week or once a month for some people? Number 2 is worship. Do they worship? When it's time to worship in class, do they just kind of sit there like a bump on a log, or do they lift their hands? Do they sing? Do they enter into worship? Do they worship at home with their family? Number 3 is the ability to hear the voice of God. If I could do my parenting over again, if I got to do over, I would spend less time teaching my kids to obey me and more time teaching them to hear the voice of God. Because if I'm a parent and my kids obey me, that's not the home run. The home run is when my kids obey God. That's ultimately where we're heading. Of course, that can happen if they don't know how to hear the voice of God. The 4th thing that's so important, I believe, is that kids in some way get involved in serving others at church. I've noticed this, that people that get involved in serving in church stay in church. Same thing is true with our kids. Statistics say that something like 80% of the kids that grow up in church leave the church. I don't think 80% are backsliding. I think some are going to college, or they're attending church somewhere else. But regardless, we lose a lot of kids after high school. But those numbers dramatically increase when kids and teenagers get involved in serving in the church. So the kids that were involved on my puppet team, my drama team, my worship team, my tech team, our evangelism team, our intercessory prayer group, those kids for the most part stayed in the church, well over 50%. The kids that didn't get involved, not so much. And so serving in church gets them connected to church, not just sitting in church. And then last but not least, which is so important, is that they choose the right friends, that they know how to choose friends, which goes back to hearing that voice of God thing. But when they become teenagers, they are not going to make it by themselves. They're just not. They need to have strong Christian friends. And so here's the deal. I've noticed this. If kids don't make friends in kids' church, they won't even make the jump to youth ministry, because teenagers want to be where their friends are. And so that's why it's important that you have a time of just having fun, just kids hanging out and playing games. I don't mean games from the front of the room, and I'm not saying don't do those games. I mean times where kids can just kind of mingle and socialize and get to know one another. That's why it's so important that you do things like, VBS is an outreach, but it's not just that. The church kids are hanging with each other all week long, and that's important time that's happening. At kids camp, the best place, sometimes I'll have kids that will tell me, I don't want to go to camp because I don't have any friends. Well, there's no better place to make friends than at kids camp. And so provide those opportunities for your kids to make friends, do special activities. So there's you go. There's my top 5. I encourage you to sit down with your team, make a list, begin with the end in mind, and then build your programs around that. Hey, before you go, can you do me a favor? Just reach out and hit that subscribe button. Also, I want to let you know that I've written a book called The Red Book, and this is my gift to kids pastors around the world. I say everything I know about kids ministry is in this book, and there's mistakes to avoid. But if you take this book and you read it, really it's the job description of a kids pastor. That's what this book is. And you do these things, you'll be a successful kids pastor, and you'll be in high demand at churches, because many churches are looking for quality kids pastors today. So I encourage you to pick up this book. Anybody that makes a gift to Mark Harper Ministries, I'm going to send this book to you for free. So just mention it in the note. If you want to give, just go to our website, superchurch.com, and click on the Give button, and there's different ways that you can give there. Thank you. God bless you. I'm praying for you and for your ministry. We'll talk to you next time.